Next up, it's Rick and David Flair versus Barry Windham and Curt Hennig. The Nature Boy originally booked this one as a 2-on-1 match when he became president of WCW, but David said he wanted to team up with his daddy. Rick was hesitant, but Arn Anderson said David was ready and it was time to let the boy become a man. Alright, he didn't really say that, but he should have. David's appearances on Nitro so far have not been great. Granted, he hasn't done a whole lot, but you can tell he's a little nervous and a little unsure of himself. So why they give David a pay-per-view match when you've got someone like Booker T sitting beside Mark Madden is totally beyond me. Let's not pass judgment just yet though, and let's see what happens in our semi-main event. Flair calls his opponents horseman rejects, while Curt Hennig tells Arn Anderson to leave the ringside area. Flair says Curt better get in the ring now or he'll be looking for a job in the WWF later tonight. And gotta say, during this time period, that's not much of a threat, is it? Barry wants young David in the ring and it looks like Davey just shit his pants. But he steps up to the plate and he tries an amateur takedown. Wyndham's a big boy, as we all know, so nothing comes of it. Barry pulls off a headlock takeover and David totally misses a head scissor afterwards, forcing Barry to put his head in between David's legs, and yeah, not the most graceful start to your WCW in-ring debut. Curt Hennig tries to interfere, but he gets scared when Rick starts naking. So we go back to Windham and David, and swear to God, I don't know if David's really nervous right now or if he's trying to look all super intense. Either way, it's not working. He gets lured in easily with a test of strength. He counters a body slam, Barry takes a few chops, and David pulls off a hip toss. Wyndham's forced to sell this, by the way, and he looks intimidated by the almighty David Flair. But thankfully, he snaps out of it and David ends up taking that body slam. Curt Hennig shouts, "Now you look like a Flair," as David lies on the mat, which did give me a little chuckle, I must admit. David tags out after Barry misses an elbow drop, and Tony Schiavone says David did a pretty darn good job for his first time in the ring. Fuck off, Tony. Slick Rick then beats up both Windham and Hennig. The flurry ends with Windham taking a backdrop. Barry finds himself in the opposition's corner and he seems baffled that David isn't taking advantage of this rather obvious opportunity. So Barry tells David to hit him and David does this. What exactly is he doing here? Curt tags in, he takes it to Flair in the corner, and at this point in the match I just want to see David wrestle. It's so entertaining for all the wrong reasons. Flair chops Curt so hard that the former Mr. Perfect ends up on the top rope. Rick delivers an elbow to Kurt's gut. Hennig replies with a chop of his own, followed by his signature rolling snapmare. And look, I like how David just plunged off the apron and it looked like he fell about 60 feet into the abyss. From this point on, David doesn't get tagged in again. The remainder of the match is Flair taking a beating from Windham and Curt. Flair tries a top rope move, but it doesn't work out too well as usual. David gets in the ring and he causes more harm than good by distracting the referee. Windham pulls off a fantastic superplex and it only gets him a 2. And while Rick does his best to fight these two guys off, he's having a real hard time of it because his son's pretty useless right about now. We even see the Flair flop at one point, indicating that the Nature Boy has been truly worn out. Curt puts Flair in the figure 4 and all David can do is look on. Barry Windham even helps out here and David just claps. He looks exhausted, poor fella. Eventually, it all gets too much for poor David and he has to step in to help his dad. Billy Silverman keeps Davey in the corner though, and again, I have no fucking idea what's going on here. What are they dancing? Thankfully, Rick gets a little help when Arn Anderson pulls Curt Hennig out of the ring for a beatdown and Rick's able to lock Windham in the figure 4. Curt gets back in and the heels go for a double suplex, but David low blows Curt and this allows Rick to cover Windham. Flair only gets a 2 though. Curt then grabs David and he smacks him across the face. The Enforcer then hits Hennig from behind with his tire iron with an iron. And look at this, look at Hennig grabbing David to make the cover. David wins the match for his team via pinfall even though he wasn't the legal man. And yeah, absolute disaster of a match right here. Now, give David credit for stepping in there. The pressure must have been absolutely immense, and again, you could tell by his body language that he was a bag of nerves. But we're talking big money pay-per-views in this era, and no one will ever convince me that David Flair was ready for a match on WCW Worldwide, never mind WCW Sold Out. David was inexperienced, he was still in training when this match happened, but he gets a proper introduction to WCW when the NWO launch an attack after the match. The Black and White come out first, they beat Arn, David and Rick down. The NWO Elite then show up, including Hulk Hogan, and Flair gets handcuffed to the ring ropes. David gets shoved around like a little kid getting picked on in school, and well, David gets his shit kicked in when he throws himself into Hulk Hogan in a fit of rage. Hogan whips David over and over again with his weight belt, and Ric Flair was apparently very upset during this because he felt Hogan and company were taking liberties. The boys spray Eazy-E on David's back, and they continue to beat and whip young David as his dad looks on, completely helpless. Rick also said that David didn't complain at all about this and he took the ass kicking like a man. Remember too that David's only 19 years old here and he's getting attacked by 30 and 40 year old dudes. And look, as much fun as it is to poke fun at David Flair, and trust me, we're going to be doing a whole lot more of that in the future, this piece of TV was still incredibly effective at showing how relentless the NWO were. You feel bad for David when he crawls back to his dad only to get pulled away again for another whipping. You feel bad for Rick crying because he failed to protect his boy. It is kinda messed up if the NWO and Hogan took liberties here with a kid without discussing it beforehand, but I say it was mission accomplished from a storyline perspective. President Ric Flair named Chris Benoit the #1 contender for the US belt, and Scott Hall took exception to this. So Scott defeated Benoit on Nitro to take that #1 contender spot away from Chris. At this point, fans were expecting Scott Hall versus Bret Hart at Super Brawl, but Flair said Scott was getting his opportunity taken away from him in favour of Roddy Piper getting a US title shot on Monday Nitro. Piper defeated Bret with the help of Will Sasso. Scott said he still deserved his title match, so Piper's going to defend the belt tonight against the bad guy at Super Brawl. Double duty Scott Hall comes to the ring with Disco Inferno. The entrances are a little rushed as Piper's music plays before Scott even makes it to the ring, and it begins with Piper using his kilt to great effect when he blinds Scott Hall for a few cheap shots. Scott then gets choked out with his own NWO shirt, and Piper then performs an air clap. I hate that move so much. Piper slaps and kicks his opponent on the mat, and Scott quickly gets to his feet to mock the hot rod, but Piper answers right away with a swinging neckbreaker, and yeah, I mean, it's a Roddy Piper match in 1999. Everyone loves the hot rod and the guy is a legend, but I think we'd all agree that he was well past it at this point. The two pull each other's hair and Piper brings Scott down to the mat. Disco gets on the apron and he gets his hair scuffed up before taking a right hand. Scott takes another right hand that puts him down again, and after delivering an atomic drop and an inverted atomic drop, the two stand in the ring and they trade eye pokes. Piper then goes out to poke Disco's eyes because this match really needs some more eye poking. Roddy then takes a ring step bump before it gets back in the ring. Scott lays in a few right hands that Roddy doesn't bother selling, and when Piper hits a low blow, there's zero crowd reaction. Scott then hits Piper with a low blow, and this match is sinking so fast. Piper gets hung up in the Tree of Woe and Disco chokes the hot rod out. We see Hall's usual abdominal stretch spot. The referee catches Scott cheating, but Piper fails to capitalise after a hip toss. With mercy, the match comes to an end when Scott sets Piper up on the top rope and the hot rod applies his signature sleeper hold. And I've never seen a crowd being so uninterested for a finisher before in my life. They are not into this match at all, and I don't blame them either. Disco jumps in the ring, Piper takes him out. The crowd finally makes a little noise when Kevin Nash shows up, and when Piper tries to fight Kevin off, Scott takes advantage and he covers Piper for the win. Scott Hall's the new US champion, and this was easily the worst match on the card so far. It was also one of the worst US title matches I've ever watched. Piper doesn't want to hand over the US belt. He seems a little confused as to how he lost this match. Scott wants Piper to hand over the belt, but instead he throws it on the mat and Scott's forced to pick it up. Piper takes the belt again when Scott tries to cheap shot him, but Disco gets it back, and it all ends with Piper escaping a beating from the outsiders. A terrible match here, but the NWO now hold the US title, the TV title, and the World Heavyweight title. Somehow, the NWO have flourished under Ric Flair's presidency. Jerry Flynn's been getting the weirdest, most undeserved push in WCW history as of late, and tonight he's facing Ernest Miller and Sonny Ono in a 2-on-1 match. Flynn seems super dejected as he walks down to the ring, and that's because Sonny Ono cut off his ponytail this past week on Nitro. Jerry Flynn's a man without a mullet, and he seems really sad about this fact. The kid takes a few kicks in the corner before Jerry pulls off a spinning knife-edge chop. Flynn Balor means business here tonight. He then goes after Ono for murdering his mullet, but this gives Miller a chance to strike, and clearly Mr. Ono's in no rush to get involved in this match. Some karate capers result in Ernest Miller getting swept off his feet, and when Ernie goes to the outside, Flynn gets a chance to throw himself over the top rope. Miller and Ono then remember they have a 2-on-1 advantage, and Flynn takes a few kicks, and we see some more karate kicks when the match resumes inside the ropes. Gerald Flynn gets knocked out of the ring again, and Sonny Ono takes advantage. Again, we get more kicks in the ring from Ernest, and Ernest has a chance to win it after knocking Flynn down with the feliner. Instead though, he tags Sonny in, and Flynn kicks out at 2. Ernest and Flynn do a little more work outside the ring. Flynn gets thrown into the guardrail and he gets wiped out when chasing Ono around the ring. The match comes to an end when Flynn throws Miller into Ono and Ono falls inside the ropes. Jerry pins Sonny and Jerry Flynn wins this 2-on-1 match. Another terrible bout here at Uncensored, and just like Stevie Ray versus Vincent, the fans had no one to cheer for. Why WCW were trying to push Jerry Flynn as a babyface is an absolute mystery. Roddy Piper takes on President Ric Flair next. The winner of this one will take control of WCW on a full-time basis. Piper recently had Ric Flair committed to a mental institution, saying the Nature Boy was a danger to himself, the folks he works with, and WCW as a whole. And Piper was also able to goad Ric into having this match where Flair could easily lose his position as WCW president. Throughout this presidency, Ric Flair has turned heel. I know it's a common reoccurrence in WCW nowadays. And seeing as Piper likes to show up and disappear again quite a lot in WCW, it's really hard for fans to truly get behind one competitor over the other. It's this lack of forward thinking and lack of foresight that's been hurting WCW in the Monday Night War recently. Nonetheless, we've got two bona fide legends competing in the ring tonight, and fans in St. Louis aren't going to care much about tomorrow or the week after. Rick calls Lil Nate out to referee the match. Flair fires Johnny Boone on the spot, and Johnny looks to Piper for answers. Boone has no choice though, he must leave the ring. Rick trash talks Piper, and this leads to Piper smacking Rick in the face, and after taking a few chops in the corner and a back body drop, the Nature Boy decides it's time to go. Rick wants no part of Roddy Piper. Double A reminds Flair that this match is for control of WCW, so Rick slowly makes his way back to the ring, and the match resumes with Piper spitting at Rick and totally missing his target. Good shot, Roddy. The two lock up, Flair takes more chops, and Roddy throws a ton of punches that would make Muhammad Ali blush. One Flair flop later, and we're now on the outside where, you guessed it, more chops ensue. Dirty Tactics are on top as Piper pokes Flair in the eyes and the Nature Boy replies with a low blow. Charles Robinson then tells Piper off for being a bad boy, and Rick then decides to throw Piper out of the ring where Arn Anderson gets in a few cheap shots. We get more chops, more punches, more chops. Oh, here comes Asia, and Roddy takes another low blow, but the hot rod kicks out of the follow-up cover, and we're right back to punches from Flair, chops from Piper. There's another backdrop from Roddy right there, and like, what the fuck is this? We're well over halfway through the match, and we've had two backdrops, punches, chops, low blows, and eye pokes. You can certainly respect these guys for their pro wrestling pedigree and how they helped shape the wrestling industry, but this is terrible. Absolutely terrible, and what's worse, this is the main story heading into Slamboree. This was built up even more than the world title match. We go to the outside briefly where the ring post and guardrail gets utilised, at least it's something different. Back inside the ring, the two competitors bump into each other and Rick's first to get up. The Nature Boy then starts working over the leg while getting some assistance from Arn Anderson, and thank God Flair applies the figure 4. Piper doesn't give up, instead he reverses Flair's finisher, and so Rick sends Piper back to the outside. This time Roddy's able to take care of Arn Anderson, and I'm genuinely surprised at this sunset flip right here. Well done, Piper. I'm not surprised that Flair's pasty ass getting exposed immediately afterwards though. Piper covers Flair multiple times, but Charles gets conveniently distracted by the enforcer. So Piper throws Rick off the top rope, and it's now Flair getting locked in the figure 4. Our match ends when Arn Anderson interferes to break up the hold. Roddy puts Double A in a sleeper hold, and when Flair tries to intervene, he too gets put in a sleeper. Asia breaks up the sleeper on Flair, and for her trouble, she gets a kiss and she too gets put to sleep. And when Charles Robinson puts his hand on Piper, Lil Nate ends up getting punched in the face. Flair hits Piper with a foreign object that we don't actually see, but whatever it was enough to knock Piper out, and Flair wins via pinfall. Eric Bischoff then walks down to the ring. We haven't seen Eric inside a wrestling arena since he helped Hogan back to the locker room at Spring Stampede. And Bischoff says Piper's actually the winner of this match. Everyone saw Flair cheat, and so Roddy gets awarded the victory tonight. Thing is, Bischoff has no power. Remember, he lost to Ric Flair and he gave up any authority he has in the company, so this right here makes absolutely no sense at all. Piper fires Ric Flair while the Nature Boy screams at a few kids sitting at the front row, and Piper then thanks Eric Bischoff for doing the right thing. Who would have thought it? A bad match here at Slamboree though. You see Flair and Piper on the card and you get these ideas in your head of how the match is going to be, but this wasn't a good performance from either man. And what's even more shocking, these two are going to have another pay-per-view match in WCW very, very soon. David Flair was handed the US Championship by his dad, Ric Flair. The former champion, Scotty Steiner, is currently dealing with a back injury, and WCW thought this was a great opportunity to get more heat on young David. Only problem is, it's the wrong type of heat. No one's buying tickets or buying pay-per-views to see David Flair wrestle, and the eventual payoff for David losing the belt isn't worth the damage being caused by his current title reign. I will say this though, the guy's probably making bank. I'd love to believe David was like, yeah, who cares, I'm getting paid. But David really did want to become a pro wrestler and, well, he just wasn't good at it. This one plays out the same as David's match against Buff Bagwell on Nitro. David comes to the ring with Tori, Arn Anderson, Asia and Ric Flair. Bill Naitch is not officiating the match, but don't worry, he will show up. Rick calls David over and he tells him he's a fucking moron before the match begins, and Malenko easily throws David to the mat after the initial lockup. On the second lockup, David gets taken down again, and look at this in slow motion, he actually smacked his head right on the canvas. Malenko gives David a chance to sort himself out, and once again Dean takes Flair down very easily, and Malenko then complains to Daddy Rick. This isn't real competition, and Malenko's almost embarrassed to be in the ring right now. David shoves the Iceman, and Dino Machino teaches this little shit a lesson in respect. Flair Jr. gets destroyed in the corner, and Dean follows up with a suplex. Rick tries to interfere, but he gets knocked out, and as Dean applies the cloverleaf, Arn Anderson runs in to take out referee Johnny Boone. Asia then squares up to Dean, and Dean hesitates at first before saying to hell with it, and Asia takes a boot to the midsection. A body slam then gets followed up with the Texas Cloverleaf, but Rick hits Dean with the US title belt, and David ends up winning the match via pinfall. Charles Robinson made the count. Tony Schiavone calls this whole thing a blemish on the US title. It's also incredible that a talent like Dean Malenko got wasted like this on a WCW pay-per-view, but David is still the United States champion and the crowd are not happy. Leave the wrestling to your sister, David. This isn't working out well, my friend. Next up, it's the Junkyard Hardcore match, and it's really difficult to talk about this match thanks to how it's been recorded. 14 guys are involved here. We've got Steve Regal, Silver King, Brian Knobbs, Fit Finlay, The Public Enemy, La Parka, Hardcore Hack, Mikey Whipwreck, Jerry Flynn, Hugh Morris, Dave Taylor, Cyclope, and Horace Hogan competing in the match. So Mike Tenay totally lied to us earlier on. There are no surprises at all. This was billed as the most extreme match WCW ever presented, and if that's the case, then Ric Flair was right. Hardcore wrestling should disappear from WCW because this was absolutely terrible. I'm sorry, but it is really that bad. We have got the Public Enemy flipping cars for no reason at all, poorly timed pyro being used when Jerry Flynn tries to shock Silver King, bad camera cuts that miss a fair majority of big impact moves. It's just a bunch of dudes slamming themselves onto cars and jumping off cars, and again, I really don't know what to say here because nothing happens. Jimmy Hart's wearing a safety helmet as he directs members of his first family. There's a moment where Hack tells Brian Knobbs to get in position for Cyclope diving off a pile of cars. Rocco Rock gets thrown on top of a car that has Weezer graffiti on it along with the word lovely spray painted on the door. And wait, I'm just realizing something. The Public Enemy are actually the surprise wrestlers. I totally forgot they were in WWF for a few weeks before getting bullied out by the Acolytes. Rocco Rock tries to climb over the fence, but he gets pulled down by Horace. Silver King's been cut up pretty badly, and it's a shame we don't know when this happened. And check this out. Hack puts Finlay in the trunk of a car, and some random dude comes along with a forklift to kill him. Finlay gets out with plenty of time to spare, and when the car gets brought to a compactor, Schiavone says Fit Finlay's life was just spared. It's fucking ridiculous. The match ends when a car randomly gets set alight and Finlay kicks over a barrel to add more fuel to the fire. I don't know. Finlay then begins climbing over the fence as the car explodes. There's absolutely no one here to stop Finlay from climbing over and winning the match, which is odd seeing as there's another 13 dudes involved in this mess. And Fit ends up winning the trophy that says he's the hardcore champion. Only he's not really the hardcore champion, but who cares about technicalities, right? Schiavone says the flaming car kept everyone away from Finlay, but I don't know about that. There's plenty of room around the hazard to avoid getting burned, but again, technicalities. Hopefully I never have to watch this again because it's an absolute waste of time. Another 15 minutes of my life I'm never getting back. Buff Bagwell vs Roddy Piper's up next. This is a boxing match consisting of 10 3-minute rounds if it goes that far. Judge Mills Lane's on hand to referee the fight, and I get the impression that this was only booked because Mills Lane was available for the pay-per-view. I know Roddy has a boxing background, but we also know how much WCW love to utilise celebrities on pay-per-view. The story's simple. Piper's tired of the young talent in WCW complaining about not getting any breaks, and Piper's singled out Buff ever since backstabbing him at the Great American Bash. On Nitro this past week, the company presented a kickboxing match that went down like a lead balloon. The fans absolutely hated it, and here we are, having a worked boxing match on a WCW event. Ric Flair stands in Piper's corner tonight, so Buff evens the odds by bringing Judy Bagwell out to stand in his corner. Personally, I think Judy gets a bad rep from wrestling fans because Judy on a forklift gets used all the time as a WCW low point, but she plays her role well, and WCW fans back then got a kick out of her. Ric Flair tells Buff he can leave right now and no one will think any less of him. Bagwell tells Flair to remember the blockbuster he gave him a few weeks ago, and after Mills Lane runs down the rules and he says let's get it on, the bell rings and here we go. A match that absolutely no one wanted. Buff takes a few jabs and his head snaps back like Rocky Balboa. Piper then brings it to the corner for a super combo, but Bagwell gets out and Piper gets rocked with a right hook. It's now Buff's turn to pull off a super combo as Mills Lane wonders what he signed up for tonight. And Piper seems a bit shaky when the two fight again in the middle of the ring. Piper knocks Buff down and Bagwell says he slipped. The crowd then chant "This match sucks" as Bagwell closes the round with a ton of quick jabs, and Piper lands a headbutt when the bell rings to signal the end of round 1. Flair sprays something on Piper's gloves and Schiavone thinks this could be some deep heat or other substance that's gonna blind Buff Daddy. And right enough, Bagwell loses his vision when Piper throws a few punches at the beginning of round 2. Flair then wipes Piper's gloves, Hot Rod lays in a few more shots, and Judy Bagwell uses a sponge to try and clear her son's eyes. A right hook knocks Buff to the mat, and when he gets up, he's still having problems with his vision. With 40 seconds left of round 2, Piper tries another combo in the corner, but Buff fights back this time, and Buff Daddy has to once again get his eyes wiped down when Roddy takes a seat. Mills Lane must be a terrible referee if he can't notice a blind fighter, and he's even a worse referee for letting Piper attack Bagwell before beginning round 3. Judy Bagwell gets in, she bites Piper's ear because that happened in a Tyson fight, and the boxing match ends with Judy Bagwell putting a bucket on Piper's head and Buff throws a punch. We then see a blockbuster because fuck it, no one cares, and the referee counts to 3 when Buff covers Piper in a boxing match. The blockbuster tells the whole story. Fans hated the boxing and they popped for the wrestling move. And look, I totally understand putting on gimmick matches like this to break things up a little, but putting this on in the semi-main spot was a really big misstep. The crowd's been completely deflated and now they have to sit through a tag team main event match. It's main event time. Kevin Nash challenges Hulk Hogan for the world title with the added stipulation that whoever loses this match must retire. Yeah, let's see how that one works out. Because WCW haven't been losing enough money, Michael Buffer's here to announce the main event match. Big Sexy comes out first and the commentary team do their best to put over the magnitude of this stipulation, but I think even the most ardent WCW fan at the time would have been at least a little dubious. Hollywood's no more as the black and white has been cast aside for the red and yellow. The Hulksters return to WCW and credit where it's due. Hogan's still able to get the crowd in the palm of his hand. The fans chant Hogan's name before he and Nash lock up. Hulkster gets overpowered in the early going as Nash forces him into the corner, but Hogan returns the favour by forcing Big Sexy into the opposite corner. The two reset and Nash applies a side headlock. This stays in for a long time before Hogan eventually breaks it with a back suplex. The trend of wasting time continues as Nash rolls to the outside and both men stare at each other and talk a bit of trash before Big Sexy finally gets back inside. Now we get a test of strength, and my god, I'm making sure that I clicked on the right show. I thought this was 1999, not 1979. Anyway, Nash gets the better of Hulk, and as soon as Hogan looks to turn the tables, he gets cut off with a knee to the midsection. Nash lays in a few right hands before scoring with his signature knee strikes in the corner, and he then chokes the Hulkster with his boot before connecting with a couple of back elbows to Hogan, once again in the corner. We're only 5 minutes into the match and it already feels like 20. Big Sexy looks for a third back elbow, but Hogan moves out of the way and the champion lays in the right hands before winding up to connect with another big right. To be fair, we all know that winding up your punch makes it at least 3 times more powerful. Hogan then climbs the ropes to nail Nash with some mounted punches in the corner. He then goes to Kevin's eyes before once again scoring with, you'll never guess, a big right hand. Nash returns the favour by going to Hogan's eyes. He throws a forearm into Hogan's back before delivering a brand new and never before seen manoeuvre. I believe it's called a big right hand. Bloody hell. Big Kev stays in control and we finally see an actual wrestling move as Hogan takes a sidewalk slam. More time wasting follows as the lads take the fight to the outside and Hogan gets thrown into the lighting truss. Back inside the ropes, Nash delivers 2 leapfrog body guillotines before, for fuck's sake, we head back to the corner for more punches and another back elbow. The challenger then takes a page out of the champion's playbook as he scores with a big boot right to the face of Hogan before putting the Hulkster in position for the jackknife. Nash hits his finishing move, but Hogan kicks out, and there it is. Hogan begins hulking up. We see that Hogan's bleeding as he runs through his signature sequence. Punches, big boot, big leg. Hulkster makes the cover and Hulk Hogan defeats Kevin Nash at Road Wild, not only retaining his WCW title but forcing Kevin Nash to retire in the process. I mean, where do you even start with this? This match went for nearly 12 minutes and I think I counted 5 bumps maximum throughout the entire bout. Punches, elbows, chokes and clubs, that's all there is to this match. This would have underdelivered as a Nitro opener, let alone the main event of a pay-per-view, especially with the stakes that were placed upon it. Absolutely horrible, totally shit, but it's the perfect way to round off what was yet another dismal WCW pay-per-view event. Schiavone then repeats that Buff Bagwell has not shown up to the building. It's now time for Buff's match, so a replacement wrestler stepped up to the plate and that replacement is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. In reality, Buff Bagwell refused to do the JOB. He felt that Berlin was underneath him and he flat out refused to go to the ring to wrestle his match. I do wonder if this would have happened if Eric Bischoff was backstage, but Bagwell said that doesn't work for me, brother, and so we have Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Berlin.
Oh, big bratwurst.
Both men make their entrances, and you might be ready to pat Hacksaw on the back and call him a good little soldier for taking Bagwell's place, but hold your praise back for just a moment because Hacksaw goes out of his way to make Berlin look like shit. Hacksaw once said on the WCW Live internet show that he doesn't get used as much because he doesn't like putting young guys over, and we all know that Duggan during this time period isn't what anyone would call a master seller, but the no selling he partakes in here is truly staggering, and you can see Berlin looking at him multiple times thinking, what the hell are you doing? This isn't the first time Alex Wright's had to deal with difficult opponents in the ring, and it's a shame Duggan felt he had to do this, because it didn't make Berlin look bad. No, it made Hacksaw look really bad. Watch it back yourself and you'll see it clear as day. It's actually frustrating to watch. Duggan performs 2 stiff clotheslines before sending Berlin out of the ring. Alex seems a bit taken back by what's going on. He gets back in the ring and Duggan stops a kick before hitting an atomic drop, and a double axe handle puts Alex on the mat. Berlin takes matters into his own hands by throwing all his body weight into a clothesline. He then performs a snapmare, but Hacksaw then gets to his feet when Alex stands on his face and Berlin applies a headlock while no doubt trying to cool the big man down a bit. Hacksaw no-sells a European uppercut, the two then trade blows and Alex has to poke his opponent in the eye to get the upper hand, and Duggan goes down to the mat for a sleeper, which he eventually breaks out of. Berlin is able to get more offense in, a corner boot, an elbow drop and a choke at the ropes. Duggan then starts walking around the ring and he hooks Berlin in with a front facelock, and things get scrappy here when Berlin tries a fireman's carry. Duggan's all over Alex here, and it gets to a point where Alex looks to the referee as if to say, what the fuck am I supposed to do here? He then has to give a clean break at the ropes, and do remember, Berlin's supposed to be the heel. We go back to a waistlock and Duggan goes to the mat. He refuses to get put in an armbar, and instead Berlin settles for a chancery followed by another sleeper. He then shakes his head at this absolute bullshit from his opponent, but he has no choice but to keep Duggan down for as long as possible. Eventually Duggan gets out, Alex takes a back body drop. He goes to the outside where his big unnamed bodyguard exposes the concrete floor, and this guy ends up taking Jim out with a forearm shot. It looks like Duggan just ran into a wall. The competitors get back in the ring, Duggan has to turn in position when taking a neckbreaker, and that's it. Berlin wins a match that was intentionally made terrible by his veteran opponent. Backstage, Buff Bagwell pretends he only got to the arena. Mike Graham tells him his match is over and Buff won't be performing tonight. So if you want to blame this all on Buff Bagwell, you're absolutely more than welcome to. He runs down to the ring to give Hacksaw a hug, but Duggan wants no part of it. Not sure if this was necessary, to be honest, but there you go. It's time for the Fall Brawl 99 main event, and you know the story. It's time to answer the question, is Hulk Hogan a trustworthy individual, or was Lex Luger telling the truth? The competitors make their way to the ring, with both men getting a great ovation from the audience. And then Bret Hart makes a surprise appearance. Bret's here to wish both men good luck in this match, and you can see Bret telling Hulk to keep the strap so the Hitman can finally face the Hulkster for the world belt. Bret says promise, and Hogan replies, I do brother, creative control. Bret leaves the ring, and it gives you a bit of hope that maybe WCW are going to move the Hitman into the world title picture after all this time, but we'll wait and see what happens. This is all about Hogan versus Sting one more time, and we start with a cagey tie-up that Nick Patrick struggles to break up. Hogan shoves Sting after the break, and this is just like their match on Nitro a few weeks ago. Jushin Liger's going fucking mental in the audience as Sting and Hulk share words. The Hulkster then tries to steal a pinfall win, but Sting's too close to the ropes. A hammerlock then gets countered with a Hulk Hogan drop toe hold and crossface, and again, this is the exact same thing we saw on Nitro a few weeks back. Sort it out, boys. The two get up, we see more wrist locks and hammerlocks. Sting gives a clean break at the ropes, but Hulk isn't so friendly as he lays in a few knee strikes and a few punches. A corner clothesline gets followed up with a body slam and 2 elbow drops, but Sting gets to his feet and we have reached another stalemate. Sting performs a body slam and elbow drop of his own before we go into the classic Hulk Hogan test of strength routine. Hulk does Sting dirty with a weak knee strike. He applies another wrist lock. Sting gets suplexed and the Icon no-sells it. Who does he think he is? Jim Duggan? Sting lights the champ up and Hogan goes down after a clothesline. We then go to the outside for a brawl and Hogan's able to take control once again. The world champ does get dropped on the guardrail, but he quickly shakes it off and he goes to work choking Sting out with some TV cables. Friendship or no friendship, Hulk did say he'll do whatever it takes to beat the Icon. We go to the ring for some chin abuse, so Hogan meant what he said, whatever it takes. The Stinger gets stretched out, he gets his back clobbered, we then see an abdominal stretch, and yeah, this one's been pretty shitty so far. Still better than the Road Wild main event though. Hulk goes up for a few mounted punches, he bites down on Sting's forehead, Sting starts his comeback with a crossbody, and Hogan ends up in the corner. This allows Sting to hit 2 Stinger splashes, but he misses a third, and that means it's time to Hulk up, brother. Hulk throws a few punches before Sting goes down following the big boot. Hulk then looks to the crowd before delivering the leg drop. Diamond Dallas Page comes out to take out the referee, so when Hogan delivers that leg drop, there's no one to count the pinfall. Hogan takes a diamond cutter and Dallas drags Sting over Hulk's lifeless body, but Hogan kicks out at 2 and Page takes it out on the referee. Why Nick Patrick can take the diamond cutter better than Hogan's anyone's guess, but here comes Bret Hart to take out Page. Bret wanted a clean match, so Dallas gets sent to the outside while Hogan's about to Hulk up again. Sting takes a few shots before falling out of the ring. Sid Vicious then interferes, but he's no trouble for Hulk at all. Lex Luger then runs in because, yeah, this match needed run-ins from 4 different people, and Lex drops his baseball bat just before Hogan takes him out too. Sting picks up the bat, Hogan says this proves everything and Lex has been lying this whole time. But joke's on you, Hogan, because Sting hits Hulk with the bat and Sting has just turned heel. Again, Sting has just turned heel. Lex and Sting set the whole thing up, which, to be fair, I don't think anyone saw coming. It doesn't make it a good move or anything, but that's how Fall Brawl ends. Hulk gets put in the deathlock, he's knocked out cold, Sting gets awarded the victory and the WCW Championship, and we now have to deal with bad guy Sting every week on Monday Nitro. Sting is a 9-time world champion, he embraces Lex while holding the championship, so it wasn't Hulk Hogan who couldn't be trusted, it was the man called Sting. Next up, we've got Bret Hart taking on the total package. Lex Luger got hit with a baseball bat on Nitro, and Bret says this won't be the first time he's wrestled hurt, even though doctors have said he shouldn't be competing tonight. Hart says the fans are behind him, and injury or not, that's all that matters. The competitors make their way down to the ring, and you wouldn't think Bret was hurt as he takes control on the outside. Lex gets wrecked at the guardrail and ring steps, and inside the ring, the Hitman delivers a headbutt to Luger's midsection. Luger takes a few shots in the corner before getting choked out by His Excellency. We go back to the outside where Elizabeth shoves the Hitman, but still Bret's able to remain focused on Lex. More fighting by the guardrail takes place before both men get back inside the ropes, and Lex finally goes on offense after an eye poke. Shivani says this is the most vulnerable part of Bret Hart, so there you go, learn something new every day. Lex struggles to turn the match around and Bret goes straight back on offense in no time at all. We see the Russian leg sweep, the inverted atomic drop and the Hitman's backbreaker. Bret limps around the ring a little before delivering his second rope elbow drop, but a sharpshooter gets stopped with another poke to the eye. Maybe Shivani was onto something earlier on. A hip toss spot to the outside looked pretty terrible, but the fall results in Bret hurting his knee. He's now limping around on the outside and this one's pretty much over. Lex focuses on the injured body part when the match gets back in the ring, and Bret Hart tops out to a single leg crab. Again, Bret Hart tops out to a single leg crab. This isn't hyperbole and this isn't me being funny. I think we just watched Bret Hart's worst WCW pay-per-view match and possibly his worst pay-per-view match of all time. They should have named this event WCW Drizzle and Shits 99. Next up, it's the World Championship match between Sting and Hulk Hogan, and fans should have known something was up seeing as there's so much time left on the card. We still haven't seen the DDP nor Goldberg matches, so the order this match got placed was a bit weird. We have been building up to this one since Fall Brawl. Hogan's looking for revenge ever since Sting backstabbed him last month, but Vince Russo makes a bold move here that greatly annoys fans in attendance. Hogan's music plays, but he doesn't appear. The commentators have no idea what's going on, but Sting decides to make his entrance while we await the arrival of Hulk Hogan. American Made plays again and Hulk finally shows up, only he's not wearing the red and yellow and instead he's wearing regular street clothes. Hogan gets in the ring, he says something to his opponent that we can't hear. He then lays down on the mat and he allows Sting to cover him for the 1, 2, 3. Immediately after the bell rings, Halloween Havoc cuts over to a Goldberg vs Sid hype video. So yes, the fans in attendance and fans watching at home got fucked over. This was supposed to play into those internet rumors we talked about a few weeks ago where Russo said he wanted to push Hogan away from the main event picture, and it looks like Hogan was maybe trying, in storyline, to get one over on Russo by not wrestling on pay-per-view. So it's all a work, bro, but it's the kind of bullshit work that robs fans of their hard-earned money, and there's never any upside to doing this kind of thing. Like, imagine if you were a Hulk Hogan fan and you paid to see him wrestle. You know, this pay-per-view was advertised with Hogan versus Sting. When the Goldberg vs Sid hype video ends, the crowd are still booing very loudly, and you gotta wonder why Hogan agreed to do this. It's a terrible piece of business here at Halloween Havoc, and a prime reason why many wrestling fans thought Vince Russo didn't know what he was doing. It's time for the strap match, Diamond Dallas Page versus Ric Flair. These two are going to beat and whack each other all night long, so parents, send your children to bed. No need to touch the four corners in this one, you can only win via pinfall or submission, I think. It takes a while for both men to get stropped up, but we start with Flair in control. DDP takes a knife-edge chop and a few punches to the jaw. Flair then whips his opponent with that pretty large strap. DDP takes the usual corner bump when both men end up on the outside. And we go all the way up the entranceway where momentum shifts from one competitor to the other. The two men then fight all the way through the audience, and again, neither man gains the advantage. This goes on for quite some time, and when Rick gets back over the guardrail, he decides to force himself on another woman. This time, Kimberly Page gets put in the figure 4 lip lock, and this allows Dallas to attack from behind. I'm still confused. This should fire DDP up big time, but again, he's like, well, okay, whatever. Rick blades after getting his head smacked off the guardrail. WCW were quite conservative when it came to blood, but tonight they don't seem to care at all. DDP stays on his opponent outside the ring. The two end up fighting at the commentary table, and the commentary team decide to leave their positions while Page stays on his opponent. If this were Jim Ross and the King, they would have stayed put for shits and giggles. In the ring, we see the real people's elbow, but Flair kicks out at 2. DDP takes a low blow and Kim watches her man get whipped like a dog. Page then takes another low blow from Rick, only this time it was in the corner, and the Nature Boy delivers his signature knee drop before shifting his focus on Page's leg and knee. Flair softens Page up for the inevitable figure 4. The move gets applied and it looks like Page is fading out. Dallas manages to kick out at 2 even though he's got the strap wrapped around his neck, and I do like how the referee doesn't help Page at all. I mean, the guy could die right here, couldn't he? Page makes it to the ropes and Dallas retaliates by headbutting the Nature Boy right in the dick. Rick then gets choked out with that strap and Dallas delivers a diamond cutter. DDP covers Rick, the ref counts 1, he counts 2, Flair doesn't get a shoulder up, yet Robinson stops his count. And fuck this pay-per-view, man, what the hell's going on? Page looks at Robinson, Charles looks really confused, the referee then calls for the bell and DDP wins. I don't know, man, I really don't know. I want to say it was merely a timing issue, but knowing this company now and who's writing these matches, you just don't know if you're getting worked, bro. Honestly, I do think it was just a referee mistake, but it still looked terrible. A great way to ruin what was becoming an okay match. The referee takes a diamond cutter, Page chokes out Rick. David Flair tries to get in the ring, but he's stopped by Kim, that I can actually buy. And Page gets revenge for what Flair did to Kim by smashing Space Mountain with David's crowbar. Kim looks on as David gets in the ring to take the worst diamond cutter bump I've ever seen so far in WCW. And yeah, another disaster tonight at Halloween Havoc. DDP shoots Kimberly an odd look as she heads back up the ramp. EMTs come down to save Ric Flair's knob. David wonders how he could mess up a diamond cutter bump so badly, and Charles Robinson says, "Don't worry, I messed up the 3 count." Rick gets stretchered out of the arena, but the filthy animals jump Slick Rick before he makes it into the ambulance. David tries to help, but of course he's totally useless. The faction throw Flair into the ambulance before taking over the wheel, and it all ends with the filthy animals driving off into the night. Absolutely wild. Sid Vicious says the idea of him saying "I quit" to Bill Goldberg is ridiculous. It's inconceivable. Goldberg may have gave Sid the fight of his life at Halloween Havoc, but according to Sid, Goldberg did say "I quit" during that match, and he's going to do it again tonight. These two had what I thought was a decent match at Halloween Havoc. They played up to their strong points, or lack thereof, so I'm foolishly going into this one with high expectations. The two make their way to the ring. Goldberg gets cabbaged after inhaling a serious amount of pyro smoke. The fight begins before Goldberg can even get inside the ropes, but he quickly pulls off his signature power slam. Goldberg beats the crap out of Sid on the outside, but the big man gets the upper hand by getting back inside the ropes before his opponent. Sid pulls off a Cobra Clutch slam that looked great, followed by a big clothesline, and Sid tries to make Goldberg give up by clawing at his face. Goldberg gets choked out in the corner. It's not looking good for Billy Boy right now. Sid then performs a choke slam, but Goldberg won't give up. So Sid hits a second choke slam, but again, Goldberg won't quit. The crowd are cheering for Sid here, and they boo Goldberg when he traps Sid in a head scissors before applying a cross arm breaker. A loud Goldberg sucks chant breaks out, and this is a first in WCW. You Canadian fans sure do like to make things interesting, and even Goldberg has to acknowledge it after performing a few clotheslines. Unfamiliar territory right here for Billy Boy. That's the end of our match, folks. Sid gets pummeled in the corner, Goldberg then applies a bridging Cobra Clutch, and Sid passes out. It's insane that this is all it took to put down the unstoppable Sid Vicious. At Halloween Havoc, he had to get beaten down to a bloody pulp, but here Goldberg made it look way too easy. The boos get really loud inside the arena as Goldberg gets announced the winner after Sid passed out. And yeah, a real disappointment here. This should have been an all-out war featuring two of WCW's biggest and baddest superstars. If Vampiro can beat Steve Williams in our next match, he'll get 5 minutes all alone with Oklahoma, and the Misfits have put Oklahoma in a shark cage to make sure he lives up to his word. So Dr. Death makes his Starrcade return after last competing at the event in 1992, and the match begins with Vampiro jumping on him after diving from the shark cage. Williams tries his best to fight back on the outside, but when the action gets in the ring, he takes a few kicks in the corner. Oklahoma's calling the action from his cage, and even if his shtick was funny, it's already seriously played out. Vampiro and Williams chop each other. Dr. Death then performs a few of his signature tackles. Oklahoma gets a bit worried when Vampiro replies with a back suplex, but Williams stops a top rope attack with a huge Northern Light suplex from upstairs, the move of the match so far. Dr. Death takes the Misfits out, making the band look like a bunch of jabronis. This allows Vampiro to hit his spinning front kick, but Williams counters a spinning wheel kick with a back suplex. Honestly, I was just starting to get into this one and I was enjoying seeing the old Steve Williams back for just a moment, but then he gets himself DQ'd when he won't stop attacking Vampy Balls and he pushes the referee. So that's it, Vampiro's got 5 minutes all alone with Oklahoma to do whatever he pleases. And this would end up being Steve Williams' final match in WCW before returning to Japan. Doug Dillinger's band of merry men come out to remove Dr. Death from the ring. Oklahoma's now understandably shitting himself. The crowd are chanting boring even though this was supposed to be the payoff for the feud, and what's maybe worse is the fact that Oklahoma actually beats Vampiro up a little when he gets released from the cage. Vampiro takes a kick to the chest, followed by a DDT. Oklahoma thinks he's done a fantastic job, but he ends up taking a chop, and that's when the Misfits get involved. Vampiro performs a Uranagi before he and the Misfits have fun at Oklahoma's expense. And yeah, you're basically seeing someone cosplay as Jim Ross getting beat up by 5 guys in a WCW ring. After the beatdown, for some reason, Vampiro pins Oklahoma, and all this just ruins what could have been a good match between Williams and Vampiro. Who is the master of the powerbomb, Sid Vicious or Kevin Nash? Well, we all hope to find out in the next match, but the finish of this one's going to make you feel pretty ripped off. It's such a bad finish that I really don't know why everyone agreed to it, including the winner. The first one to pull off a powerbomb wins the match, and we get around 7 minutes of action before the match ends. Scott Hall isn't here, so Kev's all alone, for now. The match begins with that typical Kevin Nash corner offense that you all know and love. It ends with Sid taking a big back elbow, and I think this was supposed to be a double clothesline spot right here, and Nash had to improvise. It actually looked pretty good, and I only say it was improvised because Nash has never done it before. Sid then goes for the powerbomb, but he takes a low blow instead. On the outside, Nash tries a jackknife, but Sid breaks free. Sid's got a cut on his back, and I watched the start of the match back to see where this happened, but I'm at a complete loss. The only thing I can see is Sid hitting the ropes just before the bleeding starts, so if that was indeed how Sid got colour, then I'm impressed. Those must be some real dangerous ring ropes. Anyway, Sid wrecks Kev on the outside and Nash takes a chair shot across the back. Inside the ring, Sid performs a leg drop followed by a body slam, and Sid signals that the end's near before accidentally sending his opponent into the referee. Sid then delivers a powerbomb. I mean, it wasn't pretty at all, but it's still a powerbomb, and the referee didn't see it. This leads to Jeff Jarrett coming down to break a guitar over Sid's head, and this, my friends, is the end of the match. Nash can't jackknife Sid, but it's fine, he still wins, because Nash just tells the referee that he powerbombed Sid, and Slick Johnson's like, yeah, okay, I believe you, and the referee calls for the bell. I'm not even joking. The referee took Kevin's word for it, and he awarded the match the Big Sexy. Again, it's cheap as hell after the long build-up this match had on TV. I was actually impressed that every match on this card had some storyline going into the pay-per-view, but you just feel like you've wasted all your time when you see the payoffs. When they say you can get the wrong type of heat, yeah, this is it. Bret Hart defeated Bill Goldberg in the WCW Mayhem World Title Tournament, but he got a lot of unwanted help in doing so. Bret would end up winning the World Championship in the tournament finals, and the very next night, he promised to give Goldberg a title shot because of the way Bret beat him in the first round. The relationship between these two on TV has been a solid one. They both said they respect each other, and they even won the tag team belts together before dropping them again a few days later. But it all boils down to Bret Hart not being able to say he's the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be without beating Goldberg fair and square inside the ring. Goldberg, meanwhile, says he's going to run through Bret tonight. The Hitman's next, and Goldberg will become champion again after losing the title at last year's Starrcade. So to make sure there's a winner tonight, this one is no disqualification. Someone's either going to get pinned or someone's going to give up. Bret says backstage that no matter what happens tonight, Goldberg's going to lose, and he's going to prove to all the skeptics that the Hitman is the best. And after Bret makes his final entrance as world champion on pay-per-view, we then see Goldberg getting his security escort backstage. Goldberg walks down to the ring. He gets a great reaction as his pyro goes off. The two men are now inside the ropes and they shake hands before the match. The fans applaud, the bell rings. This is the final pay-per-view main event of the millennium as Bret Hart faces Bill Goldberg. We start with a strong collar and elbow tie-up and Bret gets brought to the corner. Goldberg gives a clean break and Goldberg shoves Bret to the mat following another lockup. Hart's going to need to utilise his technique to win this one, so he performs a headlock takeover and he begins wearing the challenger out on the mat. But Goldberg gets right back up and Billy Boy performs a hard shoulder block. This gets followed up with Goldberg's gorilla press power slam that always looks impressive, and this is playing out like a typical Goldberg match. Bret may be done for already. Instead of going for the kill like he usually would, Goldberg performs two short arm clotheslines. He then tries to play Bret at his own game with a knee bar submission, but this is where Bret shines as he tries to counter with a sharpshooter. Still, Goldberg uses his strength to force his way out, and Bret Hart rolls out of the ring. On the outside, Goldberg stays on the champion, and when Bret fights back, the referee takes a bump. Old Billy Silverman's had a pretty rough night tonight. The two then fight at the commentary table as Charles Robinson takes over, and when the match gets back in the ring, Bret takes a big boot. Robinson then takes a bump when Goldberg performs a single underhook suplex, but still Goldberg looks for a spear. Bret moves out of the way and Goldberg smacks the ring post, and we have now got another new referee. It's Johnny Boone. Bret then looks for the ring post figure 4, and this, according to Bret, was the first problem. When doing this move, your opponent has to hold on to your right foot much. You can still see Bret wince as he applies the move. When the move gets broken up, Bret stays on the floor with his hand covering his eyes, and it's very possible that Bret was already concussed after trying to pull off this move. The two get back in the ring where Bret tries to weaken Goldberg's leg even more, but he's wrecked. He's definitely not all there right now. He's going to continue on though with a snapmare takeover followed by a figure 4, and at least while applying this move, the Hitman can try to regain his faculties for a moment. When the two get up, Bret goes for a leg trip, but he gets punched in the head instead. The two then share strikes in the corner, and when Bret swings back, he ends up taking out the third referee. Goldberg sends Bret into the ropes, and then... According to Bret, the only instruction he gave Goldberg before coming to the ring was to not hurt him. Apparently, Bill called for the kick way too late and Hart had no idea what kind of kick Bill was going to perform. And seeing as Bret was already dazed from the figure 4 spot, he had no way to properly defend himself from Bill's attack. Now, there's always two sides to every story, and it's incredibly easy for all of us to back up Bret here, but all that matters is Bret's hurt. He knows he's in a lot of trouble, and he needs to get through these last few moments of the match as safely as possible. I went over what Bret said in his book in a video I put together years ago all about this match, so if you want to learn more, please check that one out. Bret gets put down with a spear, but there's no one to ring the bell. Goldberg has it won, and all he needs is a referee. Roddy Piper slowly makes his way down to the ring, and while Goldberg watches Piper, Bret pulls off a chop block. Bret then locks in a sharpshooter as Piper gets in the ring, and Piper tells the timekeeper to ring the bell. It's Montreal all over again, and it's truly a crappy finish to the match. But yeah, that's it over. Bret wins, and he's not happy about it. He follows Piper up the rampway, Roddy hands him the title, and Bret looks completely out of it as Starrcade fades to black. Bill Goldberg was screwed by Piper, and we assume the powers that be are behind this, but we will get all the answers tomorrow night on Nitro.